you are Monica Smit, and you've come all the way here to England, come to Hope and Hope Festival.
I came just for this. No, I didn't. I'm doing a European tour at the moment. That sounds official, but it's quite casual. So I just visit small groups around. So I've been to Norway and Sweden and Netherlands and Denmark and Belgium and France, and I go to small events and I talk to people about the fact that we are ready. So, and my mission is also, I obviously showcase that on my Substack and stuff, and my mission is to show the world that the freedom movement is actually a lot bigger, more diverse, and more networked than we think. And if the more people think we are, the more confident they're going to be that we are ready.
So do you want to explain a little bit about who you are and how when you first woke up and came into the freedom movement, and then how you sort of gained notoriety?
Right, well, I guess I was born awake. Because my just in terms of vaccination, my mum didn't vaccinate any of us kids. I've never been vaccinated. It was never a thing. Like, no one ever cared that we were not unvaccinated until it became such a serious thing. But when COVID happened, I just wasn't afraid, because I know that I've got an immune system, and I know that I'm young and healthy and whatever. I just was never afraid of it. But I kind of believed the 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I thought, well, if it's only 2 weeks, we can do that. So like no one pushed back at that point. But really what it was June, July 2020, so right at the beginning. And one of my friends had a protest planned before COVID, and then he had to keep postponing it because of the restrictions. And the protest was not to do with COVID, it was to do with something completely different. And with his police liaison, he kept putting it back, and then he said, look, I just want to have this protest, but I'll go on my own with one camera person, which was going to be me, and we're already spending time together, so there's no health threat. And the police said, no, you can't. And that's when I realized this is not about health, because there was absolutely no health risk, like I said. That's when I came up with an idea to have an online protest. Because I still respected authority at this point. You know, I was brought up to respect authority, right? So we had this online protest. It was a live stream, and I said to the people, I will collate all the comments into categories, and I'll send an email to the members of parliament in Victoria. I've never had a video that big ever, and no one knew who I was. I just came up with this brand, Reignite Democracy Australia, started a website on my own, and I'm not a website developer, and then just boom, within like 2 weeks, I was the poster girl for anti-lockdown in Victoria, and that started in August 2020. And then Reignite Democracy Australia ended up being the biggest voice against the government at the time. And then with that comes, of course, powerful enemies, as you know. So about a year later, so my loophole was, because I was a street journalist, I would put a protest poster up and I would say, I'm going to report on this protest. And this was my loophole around getting arrested for incitement, which is when you incite other people to break the law. Anyway, I got sick of playing games. So I just started promoting protests, and I didn't care. And I got arrested and charged with incitement just for putting up a poster. And they gave me, the tactic was to give people really bad bail conditions that silenced them. They wanted me to shut my website down, which was getting 50,000 views a week. So it was really important to people, obviously. They wanted me I wasn't able to speak against the COVID directions, even in the privacy of my own home, for example. And so I said no I didn't sign the bail conditions. So I went to prison for 22 days, waiting for the appeal of the bail conditions in solitary confinement, because I wouldn't take a PCR test.
And yeah. What was it like in prison?
Oh, to be honest, look, the worst part was the strip search. Like, you know, you've got to spread your privates and stuff like that. That was probably the worst part. It's kind of like a metaphoric rape, I guess. So that was pretty uncomfortable. But other than that, I was actually it was restful, and I was able to reflect a lot, and I was at complete peace because I knew I was doing it for the right reasons. And, you know, I don't have children. I have a very supportive family. So I was the right person for that job, yeah? And because I did that, they couldn't do that to anyone else, because I won the appeal of the bail conditions, which means they were no longer, the next person they charged with incitement, they could only give them my amended bail conditions, not my original bail conditions. So it was worth it. And I also got to write my book in there, which is coming out soon. So it ended up actually blowing up in their faces, which I find really hilarious, because they didn't expect me to refused to sign the bail conditions. They thought, oh, this girl's going to cave, of course, you know. They didn't realise that I had so much support behind me, and I believe in God, so I'm like, yeah, whatever, go to prison for, it could have been 3 months, but I find it quite hilarious how much it blew up in their face, and overall, they'd be better off just leaving us alone. But they can't help but try to stop us. And whenever they stop us, they give us a story. You know all about it. When you get bashed in the streets by the police, that's a story. And they give you more publicity for it. So going to prison was the best thing that ever happened to my, at the moment, purpose in life, which is to encourage people to stand up for themselves. So.
And how's it been getting around some of the censorship? Because I know, obviously, the lockdowns were really, really harsh in Australia. We saw, you know, some of the stuff that they were doing.
Yeah.
It was bad over here, but I think it was worse over there.
Oh, it was very bad. I mean, we couldn't leave our house more than 5 kilometres, which is like 3 miles. We had to have a permit. We couldn't leave the city. It was just crazy. And the protests, obviously, they shot rubber bullets, like the size, like that's big. Rubber bullets into protesters as they were walking away. It's supposed to be used to stop conflict, but they were shooting people in the back. And there was like army tanks in the streets during protests. I mean, it was like another world, you know, like it doesn't feel real anymore, but it was like being in a reality sort of game show or something like that. And the feeling everywhere was just, everyone was depressed and confused, but then it was also exciting, because when you get pushed against the wall, just like squeezing an orange, right? You've got to squeeze it to get the juice out. So we needed to be squeezed to get woken up. And because of that, I believe, and I'm not saying that just because I'm Australian, but I honestly believe per capita, Australia has one of the strongest freedom movements in the world, because we were pushed to the edge. The most dangerous person in life is the person who is pushed to the brink where they've got nothing left to lose. And there was a point there where we were almost willing to lose it all because we had nothing else to lose. Do you know what I mean? And then they took the foot off the accelerator. But there was something very beautiful and magical about that time. In fact, I almost miss it. It brought people together. There was no infighting. There was no none of that, because we had this massive crisis. So we all came together, and it's beautiful. And I kind of can't wait for it again, to be honest. As in, they're going to try some crazy stuff soon, right? Well, then we're all going to come together and we're going to push back even better. We weren't even ready during COVID. Now we are ready. Like, we literally know each other. I'm here in the UK, meeting people that agree with me on everything. Like, we're actually a huge movement. So I'm really excited to keep going.
And do you want to talk about some of the stuff? How did you cope with the censorship that you faced?
Sorry, I totally avoided that question. Well, obviously I got shut down. I had a big Facebook page of like 80,000, and this was back in 2020. So imagine how big it would be now. I got deleted. I tried to create new ones, got deleted. How do you get around it? Well, I would say, on an individual level, the best way to get around it is to put flyers into letterboxes and to actually talk to people one-on-one. That's the best way to get around censorship. Obviously, I'm only one person, so I can't achieve much, but if I can encourage other people to do letterbox drops and things like that, and we have very successful letterbox drops, but I guess the key is the messaging around that. Obviously, you've got Rumble and Telegram, but of course that's an echo chamber. But to be honest, I'm not really in the business anymore of trying to wake people up, because they don't even know me. You're only going to wake someone up if they trust and respect you, right? I'm in the business of talking to actually the echo chamber now, because if I can somehow empower them and tell them that we are ready, maybe they can then tell someone else and then tell someone else. So if people aren't awake now, I sure as hell can't do it. So there is no way around censorship, is there? I don't think so.
A few ways, but it's a bit difficult. I mean, we use Odyssey. Odyssey is quite good because it means that it's all decentralized and you've got.
But it's still the echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you the best way around censorship. Saying something super controversial, getting into the mainstream media and using the bad publicity for good publicity. That works really well.
Pure Trumpian.
Say something really, like, to be honest, I haven't really tried to do that. like, but it would work.
So, do you want to talk about what you're doing with the light paper over in Australia and what you're doing coming over here?
Yeah, so I have a website, monicasmit.com, and I have some global initiatives on there. One of them is Keep Cash Alive, and I mean, we're all trying to keep cash alive, but we've got this little slip of paper that you can print at home, and you can cut it into 10, so it's really cheap. And every time you pay with cash, you give the cashier one of these little pieces of paper. So you're not just paying with cash, you're also raising awareness as to why it's important. And those dot points are really non-confrontational. They're just like, no bank fees, duh. You know, so they're really non-conspiratorial. I also have excess death awareness campaign. Anyway, the point is I've got about 4 or 5 global campaigns, and I just run everything under my own name now. I used to run organizations, but they're too expensive to run, the branding and all that sort of stuff. But the question was, so the Light newspaper is something that I support a lot in Australia, because of course they're the only, especially in Australia that I know of, they're the only print newspaper I know of that's alternative, and they're very professional. It looks fantastic. All their social media is professional, the website is professional, and I just think they're worth supporting, because I think if someone accidentally picks it up thinking that it's a normal newspaper, they might accidentally get smacked with some truth. And so I really support them, and I do have some other things coming up, and it will all be on that Monica Smit website. I have my book coming out on September 22nd, and I'm not selling it on Amazon or any of that crap. I'm only selling it privately. You know, I've got a mum and a daughter that are going to be packing the book for me and sending it with a little sweet note or something. So it's all personal and stuff like that. And in that, the point of that book, obviously I talk about prison, but I also, you know, talk about how good it feels to do the right thing. And even if you're in, so I hope it inspires people when the next thing comes around. But I think I answered your question.
And so can I ask what you think about what's going on here, Hope, with homeschooling, the community centre, and everything that's going on here?
Yeah, so if you were to ask me, like, what's the one message you'd want to say to everyone, I'd have 2 messages. One is, building and maintaining small community groups is probably the most effective way that we can push back against globalism, because everything they do is trying to separate us. And so a group of 30 people can actually be enough support for you to say no. So when the digital ID comes in, or when the digital currency comes in, if you have that support network, you're more likely to have the courage to say no. So building community groups and maintaining them is so important, and that's what I love about this. They walk the walk here. They're not just talking, right? Because people can say, oh yeah, you know, we should use cash, or we shouldn't support these big businesses, but then they sell their book on Amazon and they use their card. And it's like, we're not going to get anywhere unless we actually act, and we have to take accountability for our own actions. Now, Katie and the team here, they are walking the walk. They are an example of what we could all be a part of. Now, we can't all hire a big farm and do what we can't, but we can support people who do, or at least know where they are, so that when shit hits the fan, we have somewhere to go. So yes, community groups are super, super important. And the last thing I would say is that our psychology is really important as well. And I say this to myself every day: we are ready, we are ready. And the reason I do that is because after a while, I started to just believe that I am ready, even if I'm not. Like, even if you're not physically ready, you can be mentally ready. And if we can all believe that we are ready, the fear goes away. Like, I notice psychologically that when I look at newspaper headlines and things like that, and they're like, oh, the misinformation bill is going to censor all Australians, I'm just like, so what? Do it. Come on, do it. Let's go. We are ready. Bring it on. Like, we've already chosen we're going to be on this path, right? We could go down the enslavement path, or we could go down the freedom path. We've already chosen this path, so we may as well just believe that we're going to fight, we're going to win. So believe that we are ready, because I actually think we are, and I'm traveling Europe to prove to you guys that there's a lot of us, and that we're stronger and more networked than we ever thought we are. And they can try. It doesn't mean they're going to succeed, but the quicker they try, the quicker we can push back, and the quicker we can get back to living. So I say, bring it on. The earlier the better. Let's just face it head on, and then we can get back to living, and our kids can have a better life.
And speaking of kids, what do you think of the tutoring that goes on here? Because I'm actually the history and economics tutor.
Oh wow, very good.
I'm doing a bit of a double bubble. I'm also a steward.
And a filmer. Yeah, well, homeschooling is massive in Australia as well. We actually have less restrictions around homeschooling, which is interesting. I personally don't know how you can send your kids to a normal school these days. I mean, I don't know what schools are like here, but in Australia, like, you can send your child to school one day and they will come back a different child, and you can't reverse that. And as a parent, I don't know how you could live with yourself. No offense, and I understand not everyone can homeschool. I understand that. But can you live with yourself if you don't homeschool? And if your kid comes back one day and asks you about, your 11-year-old kid comes back and asks you about ejaculations or something, you know, you can't reverse that, you know? So my point is it's great what you guys are doing, offering that alternative to people. And no offense to people, you've got to walk the walk. And if you have to move further out of the city, or you have to change your lifestyle a bit, you have a responsibility to protect your children's innocence, because if you're not going to do it, no one's going to do it. So I'm sorry, you've got to make the hard choices. I know it's easy for me to say I don't have kids, but if I did, I promise you, I would not be sending them to school.
Is there anything else you want to say? Where can people find you again?
MonicaSmit.com. I'm on Facebook, and I am on those things, that's true, but there is no big alternative, unfortunately. But yeah, you can find me all over the place.
Having something that clearly works, you roll out that model across the country, so it can only thrive.
Yeah, I think what's good about events like this, about hope, is that, I mean, you know, on my podcast I spend all the time talking about all the crazy shit that's going down and speculating on who might be responsible and stuff, but it's not often that one talks about how to make the world a better place, how to fight back, how to
How to make sure the next generation aren't completely screwed up.